The night was a strange one, as if the world itself had paused to watch. The moon hung low, swollen and sickly yellow, and its pale light fell in jagged patterns across the kitchen floor. It seemed almost alive, crawling across the tiles. And in that light, she noticed something she could not explain. Her daughter, Anna, stood motionless in front of the kitchen mirror. But it was not the ordinary reflection of a child staring back at her mother. No, this was different. Her eyes, they were distant, hollow, yet uncomfortably focused on something beyond the glass. It was as if Anna could see things that did not exist. The mother froze mid-step, her heart stuttering in her chest. She could hear a faint whisper, barely audible, curling around the edges of her hearing. It came from Anna, but Anna's lips did not move. There was no sound emanating from her mouth. The whisper was inside the room, inside the walls, inside the very air. And yet, it was unmistakably her daughter's voice. The mother's pulse quickened. She had raised Anna for 7 years, and in all that time, she had never seen her child so unrecognizable. Fear knotted in her stomach, thick and heavy. The moonlight flickered, and for a moment Anna's face seemed to distort, a strange shadow passing over her features. And then, as abruptly as it came, it was gone. Anna blinked, normal again, smiling faintly, as if nothing had happened. But the mother knew better. She could feel it in her bones. Something had entered her daughter's world, something that should not exist. By morning, the ordinary world tried to reassert itself. Sunlight poured through the curtains, warm and golden, but it brought no comfort. Anna refused to go to school. She barricaded herself in her room, her small body curled on the floor, knees to chest. She did not eat, she did not speak, and sometimes her hands shook violently, trembling as though trying to hold back a storm inside. Her mother watched from the doorway, unsure whether to knock or run. When she finally stepped closer, Anna recoiled, her expression dark and unfamiliar. A scream bubbled up in her throat, long, wet, feral, though no sound followed. And in the silence, her eyes, wide and wet with tears, glimmered with an intelligence that did not belong to a child. The mother realized then that fear alone was no longer enough. She needed answers. She had to understand what had come for her daughter, and she had to do it carefully because every instinct in her body screamed that even looking too closely could invite the unknown to strike. The first clue came when she found the notebook. Anna had hidden it beneath the floorboard of her bed, wrapped in a scrap of old cloth. It was small and worn, with pages yellowed and curling at the edges. At first glance, it looked like a diary, but as the mother opened it, she realized it was something else entirely. The pages were covered in symbols she did not recognize, lines that twisted into impossible shapes, spirals that seemed to move beneath her gaze. Eyes stared back from the paper, eyes that belonged nowhere, eyes that seemed to follow her as she turned each page. In between the symbols, there were words in Anna's small, careful handwriting, though they did not form sentences she could read. They were fragments, broken phrases, sometimes in languages she had never learned. Some of the drawings were even more disturbing, twisted faces with gaping mouths, bodies contorted in ways that made the mother's stomach churn. Each one seemed alive, vibrating beneath the skin of the page, and the more she looked, the more she felt the presence of something else watching her through the paper. A sudden crash upstairs made her jump. Anna's door slammed from within. The mother's heart pounded. She moved cautiously toward the stairs, her hands trembling, notebook clutched to her chest. Every instinct told her to leave, to run, but she could not. She had to understand. She had to know what had taken hold of her daughter. The next few days blurred together. Anna's behavior grew stranger by the hour. Sometimes she cried for hours without speaking, tears streaming silently, her small body shaking. At other times, she became violent, lashing out at anyone who approached, screaming incomprehensible words in a voice that did not belong to her. At night, the mother would lie awake, listening to the sounds from Anna's room. The whispering had returned, and it was louder now, almost insistent. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps walking across the floor, though no one was there. Sometimes the faint scent of burning something sweet and metallic would fill the room, and she would catch a glimpse of shadows moving in shapes that defied physics, crawling along walls, folding in impossible angles. One evening, she decided she could not wait any longer. She approached Anna cautiously, notebook in hand. "Anna," she said softly. No response. The whispering began again, low and urgent. She held the notebook out. "Show me. Help me understand." Anna's eyes locked onto hers, but for a long moment, there was nothing behind them. Then a flicker, a movement too fast to follow. And suddenly Anna spoke, not in words, but in a series of sounds that seemed to vibrate the air itself. Her mother's stomach lurched. The voice was not Anna's. It was deeper, older, layered with echoes of many voices speaking at once. The mother's fingers tightened on the notebook. She felt a sudden, sharp chill run down her spine. She realized then that whatever had entered Anna was not just a presence. It was intelligent, it was sentient, and it was aware of her. Days turned into nights, and nights into a blur of fear and tension. The mother started following Anna secretly, noticing patterns in her behavior, small rituals she performed when she thought no one was watching. Symbols appeared in dust on the floor, etched with trembling fingers, and strange marks appeared on walls and mirrors. One night, Anna slipped out of the house. Her mother followed, heart racing, fear gnawing at every thought. The girl moved silently through the forest, and the moonlight guided the mother as she trailed her daughter. Eventually, Anna reached a clearing, a place the mother had never seen before. There, candles burned in a circle, their flames flickering in a strange, unnatural wind. Symbols identical to those in the notebook were etched into the earth around them. Anna stood in the center, motionless. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the candlelight in a way that made her look older, not a child at all. The mother stepped forward. The air was thick with an electric tension, a charge that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She held out the notebook. "Anna, come back. Please." The figure in the center turned slowly. It was Anna, but not Anna. The mother's blood ran cold as the voice that had whispered from mirrors and pages spoke again, this time clear, articulate, cruelly amused. "You should not have followed." The mother froze, unable to move, unable to speak. The creature, using her daughter's body, began to circle her, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. The moonlight flickered and dimmed. The shadows in the trees stretched and writhed like living things. And in that moment, the mother understood the truth. Her daughter was gone. The body she saw before her was a vessel, a mask. She wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. The creature laughed softly, a sound that made her skin crawl, and whispered words she could not comprehend but understood all the same. A warning, a declaration, a threat. For the first time, the mother felt true terror, not the fleeting fright of the ordinary world, but the deep, paralyzing fear of the unknown. And yet, despite the fear, a flicker of defiance ignited in her chest. She could not, would not, abandon her daughter. Even if that daughter existed only as a fragment, a memory, a shadow inside this monstrous presence, she had to try. The forest clearing remained etched in her mind long after she returned home. She could still see Anna standing there, the faint glow in her eyes, the cruel amusement that was not her daughter's, but something else's. The mother did not sleep that night. She paced her kitchen, clutching the notebook as if it were a lifeline, staring at the shadows in the corners as though they might speak. The next morning, she resolved to investigate. She could not ignore what she had seen. Fear had given way to a burning determination. She had spent weeks observing Anna, following her small rituals, cataloging the symbols she drew, the strange behaviors that sometimes seemed innocent, sometimes sinister. Now, she realized that the notebook contained more than mere scribbles. It was a map, a guide to the entity that had claimed her daughter. She studied the pages again, tracing the symbols with her fingers, trying to make sense of their patterns. Some resembled letters of a language she had never known. Others were intricate shapes, spirals, and eyes, overlapping each other in impossible geometry. One drawing, in particular, froze her blood. A small figure, a child, trapped inside a larger, shadowy form, the outlines of which shifted as she looked. Her stomach twisted. It was Anna. Determined to act, the mother researched everything she could about ancient symbols, folklore, and possession. She found stories of entities that could inhabit the living, creatures that were patient and cunning, waiting for the right vessel. The more she read, the more she realized the danger. This was no ordinary haunting. This was a predator of the mind and soul, capable of erasing its host entirely. And Anna was in its grasp. The following nights were worse than before. Anna's whispering became more frequent, more insistent. She spoke in tongues, her small body convulsing as if the entity inside her were exercising power, testing boundaries. The mother tried to speak to her, to reach the child inside, but each attempt was met with hostility. Anna's eyes, once warm and bright, now glinted with something cold and alien. One night, the mother heard a soft, deliberate tapping at the window. She approached cautiously, her heart hammering. Outside, the shadows of the trees swayed, though the wind was still. And then she saw it, a handprint, small and delicate, glowing faintly on the glass. She knew it was Anna's, yet it did not belong to her daughter. It was the hand of the entity, reaching out, communicating. Panic surged. She could not leave the house, yet she could not remain still. She had to do something, anything. The notebook offered a clue, though incomplete. Symbols combined into sequences, a pattern that suggested a ritual, an attempt to communicate, or perhaps bind the creature. She realized that she might need to confront it directly, to risk everything in order to save her daughter. She prepared carefully. Candles, herbs, and charms she had read about were arranged in her living room. The notebook lay open, pages weighted down with stones to prevent them from shifting. She practiced speaking the incantations, repeating the sounds over and over until they rolled off her tongue naturally. The fear in her chest did not diminish, but it sharpened her focus. She was ready to act. The night came when Anna began to move with purpose. She left her room silently, heading to the same clearing in the forest as before. The mother followed, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. The forest was eerily quiet, every snap of a twig sounding like a gunshot. She caught sight of Anna standing in the circle of symbols, candles flickering in the windless night. Her small figure was unnervingly still, eyes glowing faintly as before. Taking a deep breath, the mother stepped into the clearing. "Anna," she called softly. No response. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing against her chest. Then, from within Anna, came a voice, not her daughter's, but deep, layered, omnipresent. "You should not have come." The mother held up the notebook. "I have to save her. I will not leave without her." The entity's laughter rippled through the air, soft but chilling. "She is not yours to save. She belongs to me now." The mother felt the temperature drop suddenly, her breath fogging in the cold night air. Shadows shifted, crawling across the ground as if alive. The trees themselves seemed to lean inward, observing. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to continue, reciting the phrases she had learned. Anna's body convulsed violently as the words took effect. The notebook glowed faintly, responding to the mother's voice. The entity shrieked, a sound of pure rage and malice, and the wind howled through the clearing. Anna's eyes rolled back, revealing nothing but darkness. The mother's heart shattered at the sight, but she pushed forward, her voice rising above the chaos. "You do not belong here," she shouted. "This is my child. I claim her." For a moment, time seemed to pause. The shadows froze, the wind stilled, and then, with a force that nearly knocked her off her feet, the entity surged, a wave of darkness emanating from Anna, surrounding her mother. She felt it press against her mind, probing, testing, seeking weakness. Every memory, every fear, every sorrow was laid bare. She stumbled, tears blinding her eyes, but she held on to one thought: she would not lose her daughter. Then, as if responding to her determination, a faint glow appeared in Anna's chest. Small, but insistent. The mother realized it was her daughter's own will, buried deep beneath the entity's control. She reached out, placing a hand over Anna's, and spoke her daughter's name with all the love and urgency she could muster. Anna's eyes flickered. The darkness recoiled slightly, hissing. The shadows twisted, writhing like living things, trying to maintain their grip. The mother continued, voice trembling but unwavering, calling to Anna, reminding her of who she was, who they were together. Slowly, painfully, Anna's eyes cleared, and she gasped, small, frightened, but herself again. Relief surged, overwhelming and raw. The mother held her daughter tightly, refusing to let go. For a brief moment, the forest seemed still, peaceful even, as if the world had exhaled. She had succeeded. She had saved Anna. But the victory was short-lived. The mother began to notice subtle changes over the next days. Anna's laughter sounded slightly hollow. Sometimes in the quiet moments, she would catch her daughter staring into nothing, her eyes reflecting shadows that should not exist. The notebook, once the key to understanding, now seemed to vibrate on its own, as though alive. Then, one morning, the ultimate horror revealed itself. The mother awoke to find Anna asleep in her bed, quiet and innocent. She sighed with relief, thinking the nightmare was over. But the room was cold, unnaturally so. Her eyes drifted to the mirror, and what she saw froze her blood. It was not Anna's face staring back at her. It was her own, twisted, malformed in a silent, cruel smile. The reflection winked at her, mocking her. And then, from the corner of the room, she heard it, a faint, childish giggle, soft and playful, yet carrying the weight of something ancient and malevolent. The mother's heart stopped. She realized the terrifying truth. She had been watched, tested, and ultimately replaced. Anna's body was empty, her spirit somewhere lost beyond reach, while she herself had become the vessel. The realization hit her like ice water. The shadows in the mirror writhed, the giggle continued, and for the first time, the mother truly understood the phrase she had read in the ancient texts. Some entities do not just possess, they switch, they trade places, leaving nothing but a hollow shell in their wake. Her screams were trapped behind the glass. The days following that chilling morning passed in a distorted blur. Every shadow in the house seemed to watch her. Every creak of the floorboards felt deliberate, accusing. The notebook lay open on the table, its pages still vibrating faintly, as if alive. Every symbol seemed to pulse in response to her heartbeat. The mother had tried to speak to Anna, to touch her, to reclaim the bond that had once been theirs. But the child would stare through her, blank, distant. At night she dreamt of herself, not as she was, but twisted, hollow-eyed, standing behind Anna's reflection in the mirror, smiling that cruel, alien smile she had seen before. She would wake drenched in sweat, every nerve screaming that something had shifted irreversibly. Her daughter, she was gone, or perhaps trapped somewhere beyond, unreachable. The entity had made its final move, and the mother realized that it had not yet finished. Determined to fight, she took the notebook and returned to the clearing in the forest. The symbols were etched in the earth as they had been before, and the candles flickered in the windless night. Anna was there, or the body that had been Anna, but now it moved on its own, graceful and fluid, not like a child. The eyes glowed with that unnatural light, but there was no fear, only control, mastery. "You cannot save her," the voice whispered, layered, intelligent, mocking. "You cannot save what is mine." The mother stepped forward, clutching the notebook, her voice rising in the incantation she had learned. She repeated the phrases, words trembling yet determined. She could feel the shadows gathering, resisting, pressing against her mind, probing for weakness. The forest seemed alive, leaning closer, watching, waiting. The entity laughed, a sound that twisted through her bones. "Do you know what you truly face?" "I know she is in there," the mother shouted, and she could feel a surge from within Anna's chest, a flicker of her daughter's will, faint but present. "And I will not leave without her." The shadows recoiled slightly. For a fleeting instant, hope surged. But then the creature's voice, cruel and cold, whispered, "You are the next, mother." Before she could react, a cold wind surged through the clearing, extinguishing the candles. Darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating. The symbols on the ground glowed faintly, pulsing with a heartbeat that was not her own. And then the air shifted. The shadows moved faster than eyes could follow, wrapping around her, pressing into her, whispering secrets she was not meant to hear. Pain exploded in her chest as though her body itself were being rewritten. She fell to her knees, gasping. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was Anna's face, or what she thought was Anna's, leaning over her, eyes soft, innocent, deceptively calm. Then the swap happened. She woke in the mirror of her own kitchen, or at least she thought she did. The light was pale and cruel, the room slightly distorted, edges bending unnaturally, and in the reflection, her own body, sleeping peacefully in the chair. And in the reflection's eyes, her daughter's, wide and terrified. Her scream was caught in her throat. She ran to the chair, trembling, heart hammering. Anna's body lay there, silent and still. She touched her, shaking her, but no warmth answered. The entity had done it. It had switched them. She was now the vessel. Her mind screamed in panic, but inside she could feel Anna, trapped, powerless, a whisper lost somewhere deep inside. Outside, the forest seemed to lean toward the house, shadows creeping through the windows. The notebook lay on the table, pages fluttering, vibrating with the entity's laughter. She could feel it, through her own body now, its satisfaction, its amusement. The world around her had changed, twisted, and she realized she had become a puppet in the hands of something far older and crueler than anything she had imagined. Days passed, or perhaps nights. It was impossible to tell. Time had fractured. She could feel herself fading, slipping into the consciousness of the entity, while her daughter remained trapped inside, silent, unseen, unable to scream. The mirror became a portal to a world she could not reach, reflecting herself in the wrong body, a hollow imitation. The entity toyed with her. Sometimes she would hear Anna's voice calling softly, a desperate whisper, "Mother, fight!" But every attempt to respond was met with resistance, as though the darkness itself laughed at her efforts. Every reflection, every shadow, every flicker of movement was a reminder that she was no longer in control. Her body moved at the entity's command, speaking words she did not choose, performing rituals she did not understand. And yet, through it all, a small flame of defiance remained. She remembered the love, the moments of warmth, the lullabies and laughter. And she vowed, silently, to find a way to reach her daughter, even if it cost her own existence entirely. Weeks, or perhaps an eternity, passed. Then, one night, a faint light appeared in the kitchen mirror. Anna's eyes were in it, flickering, faint but unmistakable. The mother seized the moment, reciting the phrases again, this time with a clarity born of desperation. The entity roared in protest, shadows whipping through the room, turning it into a storm of blackness. The air shattered with the clash of wills. The mother's mind and the entities intertwined, a battle of consciousness, memory, and identity. Pain lanced through her body, screams tearing from her throat. But still she held on, holding on to the fragments of Anna, fragments of herself. And then it happened. The entity, realizing it could not fully dominate both, made its final move. The world shifted violently, like a glass plate breaking beneath their feet. She felt herself expelled, hurled through darkness, and landed with a thud in a cold, empty place. When she opened her eyes, she was outside the house, or what had been her house. It looked real, yet wrong, angles twisted, windows staring like eyes, doors breathing slightly as if alive. And in the kitchen, through the cracked reflection of a warped mirror, she saw it, her daughter, finally free but smiling. Anna's smile was wrong. It was wide, sharp, cruel, not the child she remembered. The entity had left, but it had not left entirely. Something remained, fused with Anna, something that would grow, learn, and twist her daughter's soul in ways she could not imagine. The mother screamed, but it was lost in the distorted world. She realized she could not reach her daughter. Not truly, not ever. And the last thing she saw, before the world tilted and the shadows swallowed her completely, was Anna looking straight at her, eyes glinting with an intelligence she did not recognize. The forest outside whispered, and the wind carried the faint sound of laughter. Not her daughter's, not the entities, but something else entirely, older, watching, waiting. And then the house was empty. No mother, no daughter. Just shadows lingering in every corner, flickering in the mirrors, waiting for the next soul to wander too close.